You are listening to the Beyond the High Road podcast with Shelby Milford, episode number 170. Stay tuned. Welcome to Beyond the High Road, a podcast dedicated to healing your heart and life following the grief of alienation. I'm your host, Shelby Milford, a twice certified life coach specializing in post-traumatic growth. If you're experiencing the effects of alienation and you're ready to heal, then this show is my love letter to you. Stay tuned. Hello. Today is, if you're listening to this in the week that it was released, it is the last week of 2024. What I want to talk about is essentially creating abundance in your life today. Really focusing on what you want to create, but really not necessarily focusing on what you want because you're lacking it, but instead focusing on your abundance today because you're creating today. Does that make sense? Starting immediately. Right now, you can start feeling more the haves than the have-nots. I'm purposefully recording this during this holiday period, right? A few days before Christmas for those of you who celebrate it. And then, of course, this is a setup for next week's episode going into the new year. This is something that I know y'all will be concentrating on if you are used to celebrating the holidays with your children or are still hurting about the fact that you're not celebrating. If you're hurting right now, and it doesn't even have to be around Christmas, it could be any holiday. I think as alienated parents, one thing that we all wish that we could have back are our kids under our roof, or at least calling us calling them, being allowed to call them, having any sort of text conversation even, right? That's me. I mean, I would take anything over the silence. But right now, the silence is what I got. Most of us are, especially in the beginning, wanting things to be different, wishing that things would have panned out in a different way, that the events would have taken a turn at some point, that you would have done something different, that they would have done something different or not done, whatever. We're spend a lot of our time fighting reality. And as you've heard me say many, many times over, is that when we argue with reality, and I got this from Byron Katie, we lose but 100% of the time. And it is true. When we're focusing on what should have happened, what should be right now, we cheat ourselves out of all of the ways that we can appreciate or at least even just be in the now. It debilitates us in our present. Many of us, and just the way that grief in our brain works, when we've gone through great loss in our lives, not insinuating that we've lost our children, but there is that ambiguous loss that's there, right? When we've lost something that's important to us, of course, the brain is going to focus on that loss because it's got encoded expectations about what is supposed to happen, the routines and rituals even the routines and rituals in your thinking on a daily basis. Now, because that person or whatever it is that you are believing that you've lost isn't there, it's like you get a little hitch in your get along, you know? And so the brain will keep sort of if there's a skip in a record, like a scratch on a record, it'll just keep going back over to try to fill in that loss, the scratch in the record, so that it can keep its usual routine, its habits. In your mind, if we replace the missing pieces, that is what will restore your feeling of safety and security. So it's entirely understandable that this happens. I think that those of you going through it just brand new, maybe you just recently got separated, I do believe that there is a period of time that you need to be in that active, really active form of grief. I don't think it's always beneficial for you to jump into the healing sort of thoughts, right? To move forward, right? Not only with your life and away from your kids, but move forward and out of the pain that you're currently experiencing. The pain is part of your prescription, if you will. And I'm sure you've heard me say, if you've been listening to these episodes for any time, that the pain is nothing to solve for. It's there to communicate with you, and it's there to teach you things, right? You're supposed to be experiencing exactly what you're experiencing, especially in the beginning of the loss, because if you switch out of the feelings too soon, then you're going to have to go back and uncover everything that you buffered away and relive through it. And many people do this, like in breakups, they break up with somebody and they immediately like the serial monogamous. For me, I never really did it with relationships, but I did do it with animals. And this is the first time that I haven't done it. This whole last few years was Nita and Pepper. Normally back in the old days, I would have immediately replaced an animal. Like I used to say, fur in, fur out, like one in, one out. Anytime that anybody left the household, I would gain another one. In that way, I never sat still long enough to experience whatever grief I needed to experience for losing that pet. It was a compulsion, like obsession for me to just keep getting more animals, because if I had more fur in my life, then I had less time to think about me and why I was doing the things I was doing, because I was too busy giving my attention out, Anyway, so if you don't experience your grief for what it is now, then you're going to end up having to uncover it. And that's what I had to do. It's not a problem, but it is what it is. So anyway, the grief is there for a reason. If it's been a while, and you'll know if it's time for you to start processing and moving past that, not past the grief, but past the suffering of alienation. And that's really what I'm getting to today. It's really important for you to start being, not focusing on what you don't have, but instead start being and creating what it is you think that you're lacking today. For example, so for me to stop feeling lonely back in the day, and I was like desperately lonely especially right after all of the strategies really started coming out hard, and I was noticing the effects of alienation, on mine and my daughter's relationship before she even left the house, maybe a couple years before she even left. It just became more painful. She was still being loving to me, but anyway, there were just signs. You guys get it, right? And so the time that she was away from me, just at her dad's for the weekend or whatever, I would experience a lot more loneliness than I had previously. I felt like I was powerless, like I was just going to be destined to be lonely and all the things. And it was really, really painful. In order for me to get out of the extreme, like debilitating loneliness that I was feeling, I needed to stop actually focusing on the loss and how other people were screwing up my life and how that everything was out of my hands. And instead, I needed to focus on who I was becoming and how I wasn't already lonely, which was really difficult because at the time, I really thought that there was no other way to see it. But the fact that I'm alone on Christmas and I have this husband, but he's out partying like he does. And my story was husbands shouldn't do this. Ex-husbands shouldn't alienate. And daughters should always be home with their moms on Christmas. That was my story. No matter what I did, I couldn't see past those quote unquote truths until I learned how to manage my mind. Before I learned the work that I teach you guys and the work that I really teach my clients, is that I read all these books, these self-help books, but I read them looking for information on how to set boundaries in order to manipulate the other people to do what I needed them to do so that I could not feel the discomfort I was feeling. So I was trying to look inside, but I really thought that if the things outside of me changed, then everything would be better. I actually did manage to change some of those outside things, but here's the thing is I still felt those awful, uncomfortable feelings, even when I changed the external. So I realized that the external was not what I needed to change. It didn't happen like I didn't like light bulb. Oh, it's not the external that I needed to change. It took some work, But so I started to focus though on who I was becoming and what I could supply to myself. And I know that I talk with you guys a lot about this, like whatever you're looking for from somebody else, you supply that to yourself and then you never have to need outward. And that's pretty much what I'm talking about here. But I want to take it like a step further, is that if I'm using the loneliness because I know a lot of people feel this because we're isolated from our family and our friends and our lives, right? And our children, for fuck's sake, right? So it makes sense that loneliness is where your brain would go, is I am alone, therefore I'm lonely. But actually, it's not the case at all. The only way that you can feel lonely, actually feel lonely, is if you are believing for yourself that you are truly alone. And science already proves that can never, ever, ever be the case. I put out a post on Father's Day. I don't know if it was this year or last year, but the post was talking about quantum entanglement. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. But the post I put, I'm going to read it to you, was according to quantum physics, a particle vibrating due to the sound that you make when you speak can affect a particle inside of a star at the edge of the universe instantly. It doesn't take light years to get there. Instantly. This is known as quantum entanglement. The greatest illusion of this universe is the illusion of separation, which to me is very comforting when we're talking about our children. It brings me a great sense of peace because we are all electricity. You are never alone, ever alone, nor am I. And not only because because our energies are all connected, but also too, you know how many other parents are out there that have felt very similar. One thing about alienation is that when we first start going through it, we feel like we're the only ones on the earth that could have ever experienced what we're experiencing because it's so next level Twilight Zone. You know, it's like, this is crazy. Nobody has probably ever experienced this. I'm all alone. Like you feel like you're fending for yourself. And that really, it extends all the way into people going pro se, right, in court, without having the tools to manage our minds. It is a very lonely road. And back then, I was so lonely, I told myself I was already alone. And so I moved out to the boondocks to live like a hermit. I think I needed that. I actually truly believe today, and I knew it then. I think there were healthier alternatives for me, but I also needed it. So I don't know how you want to judge that. It doesn't really matter. But I manifested more aloneness in my life. You right now, you are manifesting. I am manifesting. People always are like, I don't know how to manifest. You are a freaking ace at manifesting because you've been doing it your whole life. Manifesting is just creating your everyday reality based on what you already believe that you're capable of, what you already believe that you're worthy of. And you do it every day, all the time, every relationship, every exchange that you have with somebody, look around you. You have manifested everywhere that you are and everywhere that you've been. And you will continue to manifest everything that is in your future. Now, you've manifested it thus far. I mean, I'm supposing here, thus far, it's been more on the unconscious level, just because you have picked up beliefs along the way, not even realizing some of those worthy, some of those maybe not from such a worthy place, right? And so if you're feeling unlovable and unworthy, and even if, when I say this, I feel like it's going to single out a percentage of the listeners right now. I never knew that I thought that I was unworthy back then. I had a really high opinion of myself. So I want to put that out there that you may not always know that you have thoughts about you that are of the unworthy, incapable, unlovable type. And I'm not saying that those have to be true for you, but I will say that for me, there was a lot of contradiction. I told myself that I knew myself and that this is who I was and all those things. And I'm not saying that I didn't, but I also had a lot of unworthy beliefs about myself that I had no idea that I was thinking on the regular every day. You know how I know that I was thinking those thoughts? I know for 100% is because of the results I created in my life. The results were the absolute proof of those thoughts that were flying underneath the radar that told the world, without me really realizing it, that I was unworthy, that I was unlovable, that I was not capable. So in order to start manifesting on purpose, you have to focus on what you do want, but not from a place of lack. Okay, you want to come at it from a place of of abundance and already creating. So the easiest way I can articulate this is take away from alienation for a second. Back when I had just started managing my mind, I think I told you guys, I used to smoke like a ton, so much. And was a closet smoker too, because I was in the fitness field and it was just a big contradiction in itself. And I wanted to quote unquote quit, but I also didn't want to quote unquote quit. So instead, what I did is instead of like going cold turkey and being like, I'm quitting on such and such day, because you'll find out next week that I've never really believed so much in resolutions. Now I'm coming around to them a little bit more, but back then especially, didn't really love the whole I'm proclaiming I'm quitting, because I can tell you now that I was just scared that I would fail, right? So what I did instead, and this is way better plan, it was way more successful because it worked for me and I've never gone back, is I just became a person that didn't smoke. Day after day, I was becoming the Shelby that didn't smoke. I started thinking like a person that didn't smoke, talking like a person that didn't smoke, not saying like I am going to be quitting or I am quitting. I'm a person that doesn't smoke. The more that I became that version of me that didn't smoke, the less I actually smoked. So I, to this day, could never tell you when I quit. I have no idea when I quit smoking. I know I let go of it some years ago. Seriously, I have no idea because it came so naturally to me over time because I really put the work in to become the person that didn't do it, right? So it's like I looked at my life, even though I wasn't there yet, when I was still smoking like a lot. At that time, I was smoking e-cigarettes. I was like, oh, so I can actually like dress rehearsal this, right? Like put the costume on and practice this and become that before I actually go out and perform on stage. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I can just do all of the work ahead of time and see what it feels like. And then in doing that, become that person. And that's exactly what I did. I let go of smoking and didn't think about all the ways that not smoking sucked or about how, oh my gosh, I'm going through this withdrawal right now and I really just want a puff of a cigarette or a puff of an e-cigarette. I didn't really go through any of that because I was focused on the Shelby that didn't smoke. I wasn't focusing on the lack. I was focusing on everything I was gaining. And so in that, I gained this whole new person that didn't smoke and doesn't even think about smoking now, like ever, But it happened so gradually that it became ingrained in me. And I did the same thing with loneliness. There was a point in time when I was aching, right? My gut was wrenching in pain because I felt so lonely alone without my kiddo around, right? I had this story that mom shouldn't be alone. Daughters should always live with their moms. And that's what I was focused on. And so it created a really ugly reality for me. It created this whole lack, loss, shamey reality. So instead of focusing on the loss, I'm just going to accept this for face value. And I'm going to find all the ways that this is for me, right? Not trick myself into believing it, but this is the story. How can I make this story like one of abundance, right? One of growth? Just because society says, and all the stories that have been written say that moms and daughters are supposed to live together and this is the way it's supposed to go, doesn't mean that that's how every story should go. And that's the only way they should go in order for everybody to be happy or for everybody to be, for things to turn out, quote unquote, as they should. Who is to say that? Who is to say that my story isn't going to turn out to be like the model one day? You just never know. So why not live into my story instead of the idealized, romanticized story? And that way, at least there's no downside for me. Like, what's the downside to believing in the good of this story, that there is a good outcome? And what is the upside to believing that it shouldn't be this way? And Christmas just should be spent only with our kids, and kids should call on Christmas or Mother's Day or birthdays or whatever. What is the upside to thinking that way? The only benefit that I can think of ever getting out of that, no, there's no benefit. There's not even that it pushes you to change the situation, because even that, when you're trying to change your externals in order to change the internals, you're constantly having to change on the outside. It doesn't work. So in order to change my loneliness, like today, I don't feel alone in an empty house. I have spent Christmas after Christmas, I've spent all the holidays alone and never feeling lonely. I always feel a sense of belonging because I believe that I belong. And I know that my energy is connected to so much more than just me. I'm not cut off from anything here. And of course, I also love spending time with people and my loved ones. And I would love it even more if my daughter called. But I'm not going to base my well-being on whether she calls or not. That's only going to set me up for failure and possibly her up for failure too. I'm not going to be able to change how she behaves, but I can change the way that I'm viewing everything. And it's impossible for me to be lonely, to feel lonely, if I don't think that this is lonely, like that this situation is lonely. If I feel supported in that sense of belonging, then that's what my body chemistry is going to respond to, right? My belief about what is happening with me. It's really all about your perception. It's not about the external circumstances and who's surrounding you, But that's what we're all taught. We're taught, like, if you're feeling lonely, go surround yourself with people. And I'm not saying, I preach about all the time that we are communal creatures. The more that we can be around people and fellowship, the better off that you are. But if I was to call my dad right now and be like, Dad, I'm lonely, he'd be like, well, go get around people. He would give me a whole speech about the fact that I probably spend too much time alone and I should be around people, and that come over to his house or whatever. That would be his answer. That's most people's answers. Oh, well, if you feel alone, go find other people and you won't be alone then. You and I both know this really well, that it definitely doesn't always change how we're feeling internally, right? You can be surrounded in a room of people and feel almost more alone on occasion if you feel like you're not supported or they're not sharing your views or don't understand. You and I have been there a lot, I'm assuming, going through what we have, that other people don't understand us. Family doesn't understand what we're going through. So more than ever, developing the skill of manifesting your reality for yourself, believing that you're not alone and that you're connected, that you're supported, all of those things, it happens internally. You can change all the circumstances, have kids call you, not call you, do all the things. It's not going to change whether or not you feel different unless you believe. I heard the comparison the other day that if you are shaving and you cut yourself and you're looking at yourself in the mirror, if you went and got a Band-Aid and put the Band-Aid on the place where your cut was on the mirror, it's going to do nothing for your cut, because fixing the external will never cause the change that you're looking for inside. You have to change the way that you're thinking, no matter what the circumstances are. This is not just like something to say to make you think productively. It's actually true. You don't have to change a thing outside of you in order to create what you want inside your brain. And then you create the results that actually are tangible in front of you. So instead of wanting your kid to call you, not that you don't want that, of course I want that too, but putting my energy into that when thus far it hasn't happened and I don't expect it to happen, nor do I want to expect it to happen. She will call if and when she's ready. Putting my eggs in that basket and then being sad about the fact that she didn't call, like shocked about it on Christmas night, waiting the whole day for a call, knowing that already she didn't call last year, she didn't call the year before. That would be self-inflicted pain. But I see a lot of parents doing this. So many parents I talk to are like, oh, Christmas came and went. Nobody called me. Nobody, of course, they didn't call me again. But why were you expecting that? Why are you wanting them to change when they already historically haven't, in order for you to feel however you want to feel? It's like you can't actually change other people's experience of you or of the world. You can't think their thoughts for them. So why are you going to let that affect you and today in the way that you're putting all your energy and time and investing in expectations of things to change if that's not how it's gone thus far? And anyway, even if it's been that way thus far, having that be your expectation is a risky, unreliable method to get you where you want to go, because it's out of your hands. Of course, you're going to be disappointed, because even if they do the thing that you want them to do, they're probably not going to do it in the way that you wanted them to do it. Basing your happiness and your fulfillment on somebody else's actions or non-actions is like putting the Band-Aid on the mirror and then checking your actual cut on the reg and wondering why it's not healing. Focus on what you can do, how you can feel fulfilled, how you can fulfill your own life, knowing and acknowledging that emotions are nothing to solve for, and that allowing the emotions of grief, even on the holidays, through the holidays, you are also inviting in all of the positive ones, all of the yummy feeling emotions too. So instead of focusing on what is missing, focus on what you're creating. Focus on who you're becoming and what it is you want, not from a place of lack, but from a place of abundance. How do you want to be? And be that today. Continue to believe, work on, and if you don't believe that you can be that today or up there, then that's where you have to look and start questioning your beliefs about you. Why don't you believe that you can do ABC? Clearly, if you've got the ability to think it, to imagine it, it is a possibility for you. Whatever barriers you're telling yourself are in your way, you need to start questioning those. Because that's the problem. It's your thoughts about the barriers and that there even are barriers. That's your barrier. And the good news is that is so easy in the big scheme of things to overcome. It's just a matter of you questioning all of the unhelpful beliefs, right? The beliefs telling you that you can't do it. You can do it. But if you're looking to your past to determine what you can do in your future, you will continue to create what you've already had. Okay? You have to be willing to believe that since you've already manifested your past and your present, that you can also manifest everything that you want in your future. Okay? You can. You already have. This is a no-brainer. You will attract no more or no less than what you already believe about yourself. Okay? And that is really good news because that means that all you need to do is step by step, day by day, to start upping your frequency, upping the beliefs, questioning the unhelpful beliefs that you have about yourself, and start upping and evolving your desired beliefs. Okay? All right, guys. Have a lovely, lovely holiday. If you guys celebrate Christmas, have a lovely Christmas. Have a lovely rest of the holiday time period. And Happy New Year. I will be putting out an episode next Wednesday too, on New Year's Day. So I'll see you next week. Oh, and you guys, this is the last week. The 31st at midnight is the last. This is your last chance to buy the 2 specials, right? The 3-pack, the stocking stuffer of 3, which isn't just a stocking stuffer of 3. You're actually getting a whole month custom. Actually, it could be really, you could use it for 3 months, really, because it's a 90 days for a habit. So it's basically a 3 months of worksheets, daily worksheets for you to step into new beliefs about yourself. Okay. So this is exactly, actually, just so happens to be exactly what we're talking about today. So if you want to start, if you've been at that cusp teetering of like really feeling the pain of the old beliefs holding you back and not being able to get to that new job or that new goal or whatever it is that you want to get out of, and you're pretty miserable here, but you know the only thing that's holding you back is your mind, like you're on board with that, then this little 3-pack will give you a really, really, really good head start into achieving what you want to achieve, right? And with worksheets especially made for you by me and basically you too, because we're going to be talking about this stuff together. Okay. So there's that. And there's also the 15-pack. You get 6 strategy sessions and 9 other sessions. Again, it's never about the sessions, the time that you have with me. It is in the way that you are getting experience and help with your realized live situations, right? And we're talking about how to apply the concepts to the exact, and that's exactly, here's the thing, you guys, in this podcast, everything that I talk about is all fine and dandy. And I promise you that these tools work. And I think that you guys know that, or else you wouldn't still be listening to these episodes, right? But the kicker for all of these concepts that I teach about here is that you have to apply them in like this very specific way where we're picking apart each and every thought that goes on in your mind with your specific situations in your life. And there is a method that I use called a thought model to apply to each and every one of these thoughts so that you can start changing your thoughts and beliefs into the thoughts and beliefs that you've pre-chosen, right? That we talk about. So that's why the coaching is so beneficial to your healing. And I do have coming up very soon in the next month, I think, will be at least one interview that I have with one of my now former clients who just graduated my program. So one and probably 2 or 3 more interviews over the next year or so that I'm going to be putting out for you guys with other clients too, so that you guys can see what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, what coaching actually, this kind of coaching for your situation actually does for your life. Okay. Then I'm going to go have a lovely, lovely holiday, and I'll talk to you on New Year's Day. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you like what you're hearing and you'd like to hear more, please make sure to click subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. Also, for bite-sized clips and tips, be sure to find me on TikTok or Instagram. See you next week.